The comments heard on The View From A Pew are those of Mac McKoy and are not necessarily the opinions of his guests, his producer Garth, any one particular denomination or religion, the church lady, Mr. Lemke, Pastor Craig, or anyone else of sound mind and body. Now, here is today's The View From A Pew, heard all around the world on YouTube. Just search for The View From A Pew.
All right, thank you, young lady. It is another week, another day. I'm Mac McKoy, and I thank you for taking your time to listen to The View From A Pew today. It's heard each weekday, 4 o'clock, on KLNG radio, and it's also live on several social sites, social media, which that's such a oxymoron. But anyway, we appreciate you taking the time to listen to The View From A Pew today, and thank you very much for being here. Now, in that opening, where it gives my disclaimer, it says something about Pastor Craig, and that's who I have as my guest today. So, did you know that you're excused from anything bad?
I did not know. I didn't know that, but it's always good to be excused from anything bad.
Yeah, as long as you don't get blamed for it, that's great.
I get more than enough of that.
Yeah, well, we all do. So anyway, today is Monday, and we appreciate you being here. Now, one of the things that The View From A Pew has done since 2004, is do pastors' questions. And these are questions that will help you understand what is Craig's philosophy and theology. And it will tell you a little bit about his church. And so I never promote someone to switch churches. That's just not my deal. But I do ask people to visit other churches. And Water's Edge would be a church that I would invite you to visit sometime. It's at 196th and Harrison. And it's my favorite church. So I really enjoy being there and listening to Craig and his sermons. Although, Leandra's better than you.
She's really good. So I don't mind taking a week off at all now.
Yeah, no, you shouldn't. Yeah.
Actually, I kind of like it. It's less work for me.
Well, and Chad did a great job last week, too.
No, there's a great staff there, Jason. They're all three really good preachers.
Yeah, no, they are. I agree. All right, so the pastor's questions are a series of questions, as I said earlier, that I ask pastors, and it gives you kind of an idea of what the theology is inside not only Craig as a person, but also inside of his church, Water's Edge. All right, so you want the hard one first, or you want an easy one?
Oh, God, let's start easy. Then I'll warm up and get into the hard ones.
All right, are you the son of a risen God or a sinner?
I am both.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
Definitely a sinner. I've already got off to a good start today already. Primary identity, though, is a beloved child of God.
Yeah. Well, you'd be, there really aren't any wrong answers on this thing, on these questions, but there's a few that I think are primarily correct, but I don't argue with people. If you said you were just a...
Well, if someone said they weren't a sinner, they would have to probably do some reflection, because that's just, the Bible says we've all sinned and fall short of the glory of God, and, part of life is restoring ourselves back into that image that we're created in.
Well, and you had the right answer when you said both. I just said there's no right answer. I guess I'm incorrect on that on most of...
That one, the right answer is both.
Yeah. Yep. All right, so second question. Are we a spiritual being having a human experience, or a human being having a spiritual experience?
I would definitely go with the first one, spiritual being having a human experience. Our primary life is going to be eternity, oneness with God upon our death, and at that point our humanity doesn't really matter that much. God... We're God's idea. God created us. We're spiritual people with basically a human body. That's the way I would see it.
So here's a question that's not on the list.
Yeah.
From the best you know through the Bible, did we exist prior to being in our mother's womb?
Yeah, that's a good question. I just don't know. I would probably say no, but that's a question I think we need to ask God on the other side of all this. I don't see anything in the Bible that says we are, but at the same time, I don't see anything in the Bible that says we aren't.
Yeah, I mean, there's that one verse that says he knew us before and could count the number of hairs on our head, which mine's getting fewer and fewer.
Yeah, mine too.
No, you have great hair.
Well, look at me from the top sometime and notice that there is this little thing up top.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
a circle there.
Oh, my gosh.
Circle down
Okay.
mine
Yeah,
too,
yeah.
so.
Well, yeah. Okay.
No, but yeah, I mean, there's a psalm that says like he knew us, when we're in our mother's womb. But yeah, that's an interesting question. I still don't know the answer to that one. That
Yeah.
would be one we could ask God when we get there.
Well, but I guess I agree that we are certainly not a human being having a spiritual experience. We are a spiritual being. That's how God created us. And I don't believe in reincarnation, right? I mean, that's not biblical, right?
No.
Yeah. And it's okay if you do. That's between you and God. One of the gifts that Jesus gave me when he came after me and mugged me was he took my desire to tell you what I think, which is actually the longer term, for me at least, judging you. And I really do believe it's not my place to tell you right or wrong. But there are some things that, I don't mind getting into a theological conversation with somebody about, as long as we're talking about what's in the Bible.
Yeah, that question would seem to be non-essential. I think on some of the essential questions, like, justification by faith or the primacy of Scripture, that I think we can be witnesses to the truth, still without judging. Jesus is very clear about judging. Just that whole idea of a critical spirit. I think he's leading us to places of, listening and understanding, and also, being generous and encouraging as opposed to critical.
Yeah. Well, my and I don't keep this as any secret, but I was born to an unwed mother right here in Omaha at Child Savings. But when I was 18, I found her. I looked for her and I found her.
Oh, wow.
And she ended up being a superior court justice.
Oh, wow.
For the western half of the United States.
Dang, that's crazy.
Yeah, great lady too. But her deal was, if I'm going to give up my child, she never knew I was a boy or a girl until I called her at 18.
Wow.
But she said, if I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do everything I want in my life. And she's a teacher by heart. And one of the things that she taught me is we're really not capable of judging someone. You can judge your kids. I suppose you could judge somebody you work with. But a judge you're only judging someone if you can also give them consequences. Because that's what we go to a judge for. Yeah. The prosecution says why Mac's a bad guy, and the defense says here's Mac as a good guy, and the judge decides who's right or who's wrong. So we really can't judge. We really can't do that. And I think when in the Bible where it says, judge not yet ye be judged, well, we're going to be judged. Whether I judge somebody or not, we're going to be judged. So
yeah, and he does say further that the spirit that we judge others is the spirit we're going to be judged by. And I think that's probably the whole text in context there. And I think like the more that we're able to give grace, the more we're able to receive the grace.
Yeah.
The more we're able to encourage and witness, the more we're going to be encouraged and witnessed to. And it's really, I think it's a worldview. It's a life change for a lot of people. And I know, part of my story early on was I was just a very critical person. I like to nitpick. I like to find faults. I really like to almost be like a social critic in a way. But then I was finding that was the spirit that was returning to me, both from others and from God. And, there's a gradual shift over a decade or so where I just, God did take that from me. And all of a sudden, I was just a lot less critical, a lot more accepting. and I was, then receiving that acceptance more from God and from others.
Yeah. Well, one of the things, very much the same, you and I on that. One of the reasons that I say some of the things I do say, like, I don't care if you're gay, I don't care if you're trans, I don't care if you had an abortion, I don't care if you're a drunk, you eat too much, I don't care. I want to be that lover, follower of Jesus, that if you are feeling guilty about the sin you've committed, which you shouldn't, I want to be that Jesus guy they can come to, because I'm not going to judge him. And I was not like that before. Political radio, you're always judging somebody.
You pay the bills by judging. You pay the bills by being critical.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, so here's a good question, and we were kind of talking about this before we started the show today. When you get to glory, Pastor Craig, who is the first person you want to talk to? And Jesus doesn't count.
Yeah, I think for me, my dad really wasn't in my life after the time I was probably 9 or 10 years old. An occasional relationship when I was, growing up as a teenager. But it was really my grandpa Adolf. He's the one from Stavanger, Norway. He was born there and grew up there and moved to the United States in the 1930s. He was really, him and my mom were the two people that raised me. And he lived to be 91 years old. So
Wow.
I knew him really until I was around 31 or so. And just, he was such an amazing person. His name was Adolf. So I named my oldest son after him. I had to give him the middle name because there was another Adolf that we probably didn't want to do the first name on that one.
Yeah, I get that.
But yeah, it would definitely be him. I just loved listening. He talked Norwegian, he talked English. He kind of had this own language where he did some of both. Just like he did plaster back in the days. Remember when they took the mud and did the fancy designs?
We didn't have drywall back then.
No, and he just hardworking person. He came here broke and penniless, and he just he was just an amazing man. He taught me so much of what I know about life.
That's good. Is your mom still living?
Yeah, she is, and she's an amazing woman. She just turned 80 last year.
Is she in Finland?
No, my mom is in northwest Iowa, where
where you grew up.
Where I grew up. There's a large Scandinavian community there. Well, it's a small town, but most of the town is still Scandinavian at this point.
What's the name of the town?
Lorenz, Iowa,
right
between Spencer and Storm Lake. If you're familiar with, about an hour south of Okoboji is how I explain it for most people. But no, she's an amazing woman. She was a tax accountant until like just 2 or 3 years ago, and just great. She's a wonderful grandma. She's got 10, 12 grandkids, many great grandkids now. So no, she's a wonderful woman too.
Well, and as Midwesterners, we see more of those type of people because we were raised on the farm. Mm-hmm. We work hard. We play hard. So that's cool. I'd like to meet her someday.
She comes to church sometimes. So if she does, I'll introduce the two of y'all.
Well, I'll give her $1 for every bad thing she tells me about you.
You'll be pretty rich if you have enough time.
All right. So that's the program for today, and we invite you to listen anytime you can. You can always hear it on the radio, 4 o'clock Central Time, and it's also always on the site called YouTube. And all you have to do is say or look for The View From A Pew, and that's where you'll find us. I do want to thank the folks at Divine Truth Christian Stores. No matter what it is that you need, you can always go to Divine Truth Christian Store on the internet and order anything you want. I'm Mac McKoy. I'll be back here in 23 hours. And if I'm not, just go find Jesus, because I'll be with him.
Where you'll find more.
Do you have water in the fridge?
There's a glass up in the thing, and then you just get tap water. That's all I've got.
That's totally fine.
All right, for those of you that are online today, thank you very much for listening. We do all week shows in one sitting, and we do not stop and start the stream because I want to be transparent. I want you to realize that this is who we are and what we do. And we thank you very much for taking the time to listen to us here on The View from a Pew.
The comments heard on The View from a Pew are those of Mac McKoy and are not necessarily the opinions of his guests, his producer Garth, any one particular denomination or religion, the church lady, Mr. Lemke, Pastor Craig, or anyone else of sound mind and body. Now, here is today's The View from a Pew, heard all around the world on YouTube. Just search for The View from a Pew.
Thank you, Emily, and I want to thank the folks at The Chosen who allow us to use their music as what we call in our business the bumper music. And one of the reasons I use this is because you won't hear it any other where. This is not a song that you'll hear on a Christian radio station that plays Christian music. So, again, thank you to Dallas and all the folks at The Chosen for allowing us to use their music. All right, we are doing The View from a Pew today with my guest, Pastor Craig, the one that's in the disclaimer. And we're talking about some of the, what I call the pastor's questions, which are about not only Craig's theology, but the theology of his church, which here in Omaha is called Water's Edge, and it's about 196th and Harrison. And I would strongly ask you that next time you've got a Sunday that you'd like to just visit another church, come on out to Water's Edge. I think you'll find it delightful and wonderful. And Craig is you're just really good at what you do, and it's natural for you.
It
seems natural.
It's 25 years, and there's some things that are natural. There's some things I'm still working on. I love being a pastor. I love caring for people. I love preaching still. You'll notice we have other people that probably do a little bit more than they used to, and the church has required me to, be a leader in certain areas. We're building the building now.
Yeah.
A lot of fundraising that goes on, but no, I wake up every morning. I love what I do.
Well, and it shows. And I appreciate your messages, especially the one you did on Easter. And without going into any long depth, you talked about a Good Friday Christian.
Yeah.
And a Good Friday Christian is judgmental, and they're fearful.
Mm-hmm.
And an Easter Christian knows they've been forgiven. And that's the life we ought to live, right? Did I say that right?
No, I think that's really good, and that's a good summary. I think Good Friday Christians, we focus on the sin of the cross, the greed that was along with that, and greed on Easter was replaced by generosity. You think about envy, though, the people that envy and were jealous of Jesus, and that's replaced by community. We think about the sin that's replaced by grace. We think about the pain that's replaced by peace. And I had a hunch that there's a lot of people that were living as Good Friday Christians, and God invites us to live a life as an Easter Christian. Jesus isn't dead anymore. He's alive.
Right. Yeah, it was just a very good message. And you can find all of Craig's messages at weomaha.com.
Yep, weomaha.com.
And we stands for Water's Edge, but it's weomaha.com. And I would encourage you to listen to any of his messages, but especially the Easter Sunday one. All right, I'll just tell you, the last question was, when you get to glory, who's the first person you want to talk to?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the first, but I want to ask the guy in the crowd that was yelling, crucify him,
Mm-hmm.
and see how his life changed when Resurrection Sunday came. Anyway, that's who I want to talk to. All right, simple question, baptism, sprinkle or dunk?
Yeah, so we do both. So I do love, and I greatly respect, like, the rich Baptist evangelical tradition of full immersion. In fact, when I get to do those, it's really some of the highlights of ministry is, taking someone and dipping them in the tank and just seeing like the smile on their face when they emerge from that is such a powerful thing. But I also, many of the baptisms we do are infant baptisms. And so the theology behind that is, so in the book of Acts, it says like entire, families were baptized. Parents make decisions for kids all the time. So here, what the parents are doing is making the decision for the child until the child can make the decision for themselves. So then what we do is we follow up the infant baptism with and we just actually had our confirmation service on Sunday, a confirmation class that the kids go through. And then, this is typically in 8th grade for us. So they go through, and what they do is they confirm their baptism. So I can't dunk a 1-month-old baby without probably getting Child Protective Services.
Yeah, right.
So in that case, and I don't even, so Jesus was baptized in the Jordan River. Now, if you and I were like walking in the desert and like I brought you to faith or led you to faith, and all we have is a canteen with a little bit of water. There's the symbol. So the symbol is, I'll take a little bit of water and I'll just make the sign of a cross in your forehead. It's kind of like when I do weddings, one thing I've noticed is some people like invest like a small fortune in the wedding ring. And some people just have a very simple band. And I don't think the size of the ring has any correlation to, how much the, husband like loves the wife.
Yeah.
It just has a correlation to how much they spend on the ring.
It's supposed to spend, what, 2 months, 3 months?
2 or 3 months.
Or
I haven't heard that one lately. But so then with, the same true with water. I mean, I love the immersion stuff, and you use a ton of water there. And, sometimes it's appropriate just to use a little bit of water. And the symbol's the same. It doesn't change, how much God loves us. And I don't see baptism, and we don't see baptism as a requirement for salvation. So the Bible says that we're saved by grace through faith. It doesn't say we're, saved by baptism.
Yeah.
So baptism then becomes a symbol of that salvation. And we believe that babies experience salvation. Jesus himself says, let the children come to me because theirs is the kingdom of heaven. So to me, that's not an either or, it's a both. And I feel comfortable with both of them.
Now, here's a question I have for you. Can anyone baptize someone, or should they be ordained as a minister or a reverend or a priest or whatever the title is?
Yeah, so in our tradition, Wesleyan Methodist type tradition, we do believe that the elder presides over the word, the sacrament, and the order. We see baptism as one of our 2 sacraments, along with the Eucharist, the Mass, the Holy Communion. So in our context, it is the ordained elder that does the baptism. Now, I watch a lot of other churches, and I absolutely think it's like this beautiful, powerful thing. Like if, you led a friend to faith and you're the one that's in the tank with him and you're the one that's doing the baptism. So I'm fine with either way. In my tradition, my understanding, the elder is the one that does that. But if there's somebody out there that's not following that, I'm not a dogmatic rule-following person. I think it's a beautiful tradition if other people can lead the sacraments as well.
My guest on The View from a Pew today is Pastor Craig Finnestad, right?
Yep.
I remember I got that wrong the first time he came on the radio. And he is the lead pastor at Water's Edge, which is about 196th and Harrison. And I would strongly encourage you to join Craig and his staff one Sunday and just check it out. And the person you'll probably enjoy the most is Jimmy. Jimmy is the worship leader, and man, that guy can play a guitar like nothing I've ever seen.
No, I'm more of a quiet, reflective person, and Jimmy is just like full of joy. I mean, if nothing else, you just look at his smile, and he just loves what he's doing. He's a great musician, and he's done a really good job, I feel, in the last year or so. He's just been with us, he's been the leader for about a year or so, and he has done a really good job of engaging other musicians and letting some of their talents shine, and just we're blessed to have Jimmy around.
Yeah, we are. He's a great guy. All right, now, here's the next question. And if I need to unpack this for you to understand, I'm okay, because I've never been comfortable with how this is worded, but I don't know how to word it any difference. But it's really applicable in this day and time. So the question is tolerance the characteristic of a person with no convictions? Is tolerance the characteristic of a person with no convictions?
I would see that as a possibility. I think you could have, I think you can have convictions and be tolerant. I don't think you have to have convictions. I think you don't have to have convictions, and you wouldn't be very tolerant. So I wouldn't see a high correlation between tolerance and conviction. And I think there's like a good type of tolerance, and there's like a shadow, a dark side to tolerance. So I think the good side to tolerance is you're willing to listen, you're willing to try to understand somebody else. I would see that as like a really helpful thing. I think when the tolerance becomes like a primary value as opposed to like truth, then we can run into some problems. So I don't see a huge correlation between tolerance and conviction and lack of conviction.
Okay, good answer.
It's a good question. It's a really kind of heady question.
Well, and like I said earlier, in today's time, tolerance is a word that's bounded about. Bounded? Kind of like a tennis ball on a tennis court. It means something different to everybody right now.
Yeah, I think tolerance, when it enables self-destructive behavior, is going to be a very unhealthy behavior.
Yeah.
You know, so I have a 16-year-old son, and let's just say if he wasn't doing his homework or he came home late every night, and I was tolerant of that, that's not being much of a parent. What I'm doing is I'm enabling him to do these self-destructive behaviors. In this case, I think a better thing would be accountability. So David, why aren't you doing your homework? David, we need to talk about you coming home late. So, yeah, tolerant it's not always a good thing, although it can be a good thing.
All right, last question for this Wednesday.
Yeah.
What temptation does the accuser most often whisper in people's ear? And I know that's a tough question because it's different for everybody.
And I thought about that one a lot. So I think God's primary rival in the world today is people's love of money.
Okay.
I really do think that. I think that Jesus himself says where your treasure is, there your heart is as well. I think the accuser is saying like, okay, if you can buy this, if you can own this, if you can have this much, then everything is going to be fine. And, I know people who are living paycheck to paycheck, who are totally content and healthy and happy in life. And I know people in that situation that are miserable. I know multimillionaires who are totally happy and content with life. And I know some who really struggle, with their relationships, spiritually, physically. So money is going to make a promise that it can't keep. And Jesus, Paul, they say, beware of the love of money. It's the love of money that's the root of all evil. Now, money in itself isn't bad, but no, I think Satan uses materialism, consumerism, money, finances to really disrupt what God's trying to do in our life.
Thanks for listening on this Wednesday. Pastor Craig will be back tomorrow in 23 hours. And I want to thank the folks at DivineTruthChristianStores.com. Order anything you want, anytime from them. I'll see you in 23 hours. And if I'm not here, find Jesus, because I'll be with him. And don't forget to forgive.
The comments heard on The View from a Pew are those of Mac McKoy and are not necessarily the opinions of his guests, his producer Garth, any one particular denomination or religion, the church lady, Mr. Lemke, Pastor Craig, or anyone else of sound mind and body. Now, here is today's The View from a Pew, heard all around the world on YouTube. Just search for The View from a Pew.
Good afternoon. I appreciate you taking the time to listen to us. If you are watching this online on YouTube or any other social media platform that we have this program on, you'll notice that we are live when we record all of the shows, obviously, for the radio, but we do them a week in advance. So you're watching a program that we're doing live today, but you'll hear it on a different day on the radio, and that's kind of cool, and I like doing it that way, and I thank you for listening. My guest today is Craig Finnestad. He is the senior pastor. Senior, is that the right word?
Yeah, I just go by pastor, but there's 4 of us. But
all right, well, he's the pastor.
I started the thing 17 years ago.
One of the pastors. How about we do that at Water's Edge, and we invite you to come and join them anytime. So the last question we talked about yesterday was, what does the accuser most often whisper in your ear?
Yeah.
And I think your answer, I don't think, your answer was basically the love of money.
Yeah.
All right, so here's a question that kind of has to do with this. And this is a tough question for some people to answer. Do you have a relationship with the accuser? And I'm not necessarily saying you, but do we have a relationship with the accuser?
I would say probably all of us do to some extent. I mean, the Bible is clear. He's active in the world. Now, basically, I have a relationship with everybody I ever encounter. Some relationships are good and vibrant and healthy and life-giving. Some I could certainly do without. But so, I mean, it's not a good holistic relationship that I'm seeking, but he's kind of like a pest. Like, when you're 12 years old, it's a 5-year-old kid down the street. He just doesn't leave you alone. He keeps wanting to, be a part of your life. So, in that sense, I mean, there is a relationship.
All right, well, good answer. So here's the next question. How do we, and if you want to say you can, how do we underestimate God?
Yeah, gosh. I was just talking to a friend yesterday that was going to meet with a church council last night, and he's a consultant. He helps churches raise money, and he really had some tough words that he had to, give to the council. He wasn't overly impressed with the way the church was running, and he was asked me to pray with him. I prayed with him, and both of us kind of said, "Okay, let's just hope this goes all right." So he texted me after the meeting last night, and I was in a meeting, so I didn't get until later. But he just said, there was tears, there was repentance, there was hope, there was solidarity, and so here's 2 people that lead churches, and we're just saying, okay, God, just let this not be a complete train wreck, and God turned it into something amazing, and I just see God do that all the time. So I think we can do what we can do as humans, or what other humans can do, and God consistently can exceed our wildest dreams and expectations.
Yeah, I always love it when somebody says, well, I guess the only thing left to do is pray.
Yeah.
Well, why didn't we start with prayer, rather than...
Yeah, it's kind of like a football team, 3 seconds left in the game, they're on the 40-yard line, and they got one pass into the end zone, but it wasn't that play that lost them the game. It's, all
everything
that stuff
before.
That went up to that for sure.
All right, here's a fun question. Does grace trump the law? Does grace trump the law?
So, not really. Grace and the law have this, they're kind of like siblings in a way. Siblings that don't always get along or play well together. So, the law is the law. Grace realizes that as imperfect human beings, we're not always going to, score 100%. So grace says you're forgiven and you get to try again. So the law doesn't change because of grace. I had a small group one time, and it was a small group of people in their 20s, and they texted me one night, and the question was like, is the text they were looking at that we were studying was as our sin increases, God's grace increases even more.
Yeah.
And they said, well, why wouldn't we want to like sin more so we can achieve more of God's grace? And I thought, okay, that's actually not a bad question. But then I thought about the consequences of sin. And that would be the reason why. I mean, yeah, we all want to experience more of God's grace, but we don't want to go with the consequence that we have to experience because of sin. So, like, let's just say that, like, I gossiped about you to, like, someone else in the church, and, like, you found out about that.
Ew.
Like, that would be bad for our relationship. That would hurt you. It would hurt me to know that I hurt you. So there I sinned. Now, God's going to restore me. Hopefully God would restore us as well. But there's consequences. You're always going to remember that I said something that wasn't true about you. And so the law remains the law. Grace gives us a second and a third chance and restores us. But, you know, we can't lose the truth of the law. I mean, like Jesus, when he came to the world, and I'll substitute the word truth for law because I think they're just so related to each other. Jesus, in John, I think it's like 1:14, he says, I am full of grace and truth. And I don't see, you know, one as higher than the other. I think they're both, you know, outstanding virtues and values.
My guest today is Pastor Craig Finnestad. He is one of the pastors at Water's Edge Church. It's weomaha.com. You're welcome to look it up and check it out for yourself some Sunday. We would appreciate it. Services are at 9 and 10:30. All right. Operative word here is lose. Can you lose your salvation?
Yeah, so I believe you can. This isn't a universal thought. There's a lot of people that really see the doctrine, you know, once saved, always saved. And there's some scripture I think you can take out of context and, you know, back that up. If someone believes that, you know, that's their belief. And I would be tolerant of that because, you know, there's scripture that backs that up. As I look at the whole of scripture, though, so let's go back to Ephesians 2:8, where we're saved by grace through faith. Yeah, I think I've seen and I've witnessed people, you know, lose faith. I've, you know, seen Christians turn into like almost like hardcore atheists. So I see in those cases, and there's Bible metaphors for this as well, where, you know, people have fallen and gone away from the kingdom. So I do think it's possible. You know, there's probably some listeners out there that are going to disagree with me on this one, and, you know, that's fine.
Pastor Craig Finnestad is my guest from Water's Edge. It's weomaha.com if you'd like to check it out. And you're welcome to join Craig and his staff each Sunday at 9 and at 10:30. And you can experience the church for yourself. All right. Would you prefer to understand or be understood?
Well, I think all of us want to be understood. We're all wired that way, that we want to be understood. So my initial thought is, yeah, we want to be understood. But then, as I think about the gospel, you know, Jesus tried to understand people as well. He asked a lot of questions. He lived with them. He walked with them. So I actually think it's a higher value to understand than to be understood. Although I think like we're just wired as human beings that we want to be understood. So I would like to say the answer is I would like to understand more than be understood. I think probably the selfish, you know, sinful part of me wants everyone to, you know, I want people to understand, you know, who I am, what I'm going through, all that sort of stuff.
All right. So we've been talking about church, your church, which is Water's Edge out at 196th and Harrison. So if you had to categorize your church as one or the other, is your church a cruise ship or a battleship?
Yeah, hopefully it would be a battleship. So if you think about Sabbath, basically God was on a battleship for 6 days, and he created the world, and then on the seventh day he was on a cruise ship resting.
Yeah.
So I think there's a place for a cruise ship, that there are some times that people need to come and, be loved on. There's a time where people need to come and grieve. There's a time that, people need to come and just experience community and recreation. There's nothing wrong with that part of the church being a cruise ship. But I think 80-90% of the time the church has got to be a battleship, in the sense that there's a mission. Our mission is to lead people into a growing relationship with Jesus Christ and each other. The vision is to relentlessly, have a transforming relationship with God, invest in the next generation, lead the way in generosity. So there's a time for both. Maybe 6 days out of the week a battleship and 1 day out of the week a cruise ship, because we do value Sabbath, and we can only do so much if we're burned out and maxed out and stressed out. And Sabbath is God's gift to us to restore us to really get back on the battleship where we can be battlers for Jesus.
And again, that battleship is called Water's Edge. You can look it up online at Omaha.com. So, do you have a life verse, and what is it?
I've gone through different life verses, so maybe I don't have a life verse. I think I probably had scriptures that inform me at different times in life, and I do. I've already mentioned it once or twice, like the Ephesians 2:8. I've never really strayed very far from that we're saved by grace through faith.
Yeah.
So I would say if I had one, it's probably Ephesians 2:8.
All right. So, how are we doing on time? We're doing good here. So, here's a fun one. What Bible character reminds you of you?
I would say probably Jacob. I resonate with Jacob. I think as a younger person, I was kind of the heel grabber, trying to make my way in life, even willing to take a few shortcuts to get there. So when I was in my mid to late 20s, there was a wrestling match with God. And it was really at that river where me and God were wrestling, just like Jacob and God were wrestling, that, at that point, God changed my name. God changed my name from, sinner to saved. God changed my name from, grabber to witness. God changed my identity from, someone that was, so Jesus, he talks about, what does it profit to gain the whole world and yet forfeit your soul? And it was kind of during that wrestling match over, the course of a few months that, God taught me that. And maybe that's the life verse, what does it profit to gain the whole world but forfeit your soul? And so, Jacob then, kind of limped away from the wrestling match, and his life was never the same since. And, Israel was, born in that moment. And I would say Jacob is the person I probably resonate with the most.
My guest today has been Craig Finnestad from Water's Edge. We'll see you back here tomorrow, same time, same bat station. I love to say that.
Same bat channel.
Same bat channel. And if I'm not here tomorrow, just go look for Jesus, because I'll be with him. And thanks to DivineTruthStores.com being our sponsor here on The View From A Pew.
The comments heard on The View From A Pew are those of Mac McKoy and are not necessarily the opinions of his guests, his producer Garth, any one particular denomination or religion, the church lady, Mr. Lemke, Pastor Craig, or anyone else of sound mind and body. Now here is today's The View From A Pew, heard all around the world on YouTube. Just search for The View From A Pew.
Thank you, Emily, and inviting you to join us today. I appreciate you being here. Remember, you can always actually listen and watch. These are webcasts, not just podcasts. Webcast has a visual as well as an audio. They're always on YouTube for you, and just search for The View From A Pew, and that's where you'll find us here online and in social media, Facebook, Twitter, some of those places. All right, so it's a Friday and we're wrapping stuff up for the week. Um, I know this is kind of a personal question, but if your doctor informed you that you have a year or less to live, what are three things that you would make sure that you did during that time?
Yeah, I guess it probably depend like how much energy I had or how I felt. So, I mean, if I was healthy for most of that time, let's just assume that's the case. I would definitely like to go to Norway one more time. See family there, and it's just such a beautiful place. So that'd be one of them. I would definitely want to, spend as much time as I could with family. Even I think if I knew the end was coming, and maybe this is a principle for all of us in life, because the end is coming eventually, whether it's a year from now or 20 years from now. Like, just tell the boys, here's kind of what I've learned in life, and here's the 3 things or 5 things I want you to know. I would probably, I'd prepare for paradise. I'd get used to my permanent home, so I'd spend a lot of time praying and reading the scriptures and hanging out with Jesus, because that's my forever home as well. So in that way, I'd probably spend the 3rd thing just preparing for paradise.
There you go. All right, I'm not hooked on death today, but there's another question for that. I'm sorry to tell you, Pastor, but you've died. And for whatever reason, they've asked me to do your eulogy.
Mm-hmm.
What do you want to be remembered by? How do you want to be remembered?
Yeah, that's an interest. I was actually like starting to. Yeah, I'm 53 and I'm not anticipating dying anytime soon, but maybe God has other plans, or maybe there's just bad luck or something. But I've done so many funerals of so many people younger than me, and I've kind of seen like people who have actually done some thought, and those funerals are just so easy. Not so easy. They're easier to do than someone who hasn't thought about it. So I've actually been thinking about like what songs would I want, who would I want to talk. But your question is a little bit different in the sense of what would I want to be remembered for. And so one of the things that I'd always want to be remembered for is, just my relationship with family. How I love the boys, for example, and I'll always live on in a way, through them and hopefully their children in the future. I think the other thing is when I started the Water's Edge back in 2005. I don't think I really had any idea that it would become what it was. I mean, I was just trying to get us to the place of, can we get enough people? Can we, take in enough money to pay the bills? Can we do some good? And it's really, I do think sometimes as I'm leaving the church or as I'm driving in, this will always be part of my legacy. Whether I'm the pastor there for another year, whether I have, another 10, 12 years left in me. Just all the good that's happened from that. So I would want someone to point out that, we did a lot of good, and there's, I still believe that the church, by far, the best days are still in front of us. And I'd want to be remembered as a funny person. I like to make people laugh. I just think laughter is joy. Laughter is not the opposite of seriousness. I see laughter and humor as the opposite of despair. And having that worldview is just, I try not to let despair win. I try to let joy win.
Pastor Craig Finnestad is my guest today. His church is Water's Edge out at about 196th and Harrison in Gretna. And if you would like to visit, we'd love to have you there, or I'm speaking for Craig, I guess. Services are at 9 and 10:30 every Sunday morning. All right. So how would you counsel somebody who made this statement? I may forgive, insert name, but I'll never forget what they did.
I think that's normal. I don't, someone said forgive and forget, and they're not the same thing. In fact, sometimes I think it's best not to forget, and sometimes I think it's impossible to forget. But to hold on to that grudge and let bitterness and resentment, so Jesus says, like, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, and that's where the gospel becomes really tough. And I've heard stories of in the church, like there's a man whose sister was murdered. There's parents whose daughter was murdered, both by their significant other, and like try. I mean, so like, back to the point, if I like, gossip about you, I mean, you're probably going to get to that place where it's, you're able to forgive, but it might still be in the back of your mind. Well, Craig said that about me once, and maybe the gift of remembering there is that you can see the beauty of restoration, and you can see the beauty of forgiveness. Now, I think the danger of not forgiving means that we're going to let that other person continue to hold power over us. So if we don't forgive the offender, our lives then remain filled with the bitterness and the resentment. And if we can let go and forgive, then all of a sudden, and forgiveness, it just doesn't mean like a restored relationship. It may. Sometimes forgiveness does say, though, like, okay, you've hurt me and you've hurt me enough and you've hurt me often enough or you hurt me deep enough that we really do need to go our separate ways. But I do want you to know that I forgive you, and I'm not going to let you hurting me in the past continue to hurt me in the future.
Craig Finnestad is my guest today from Water's Edge at 196th and Harrison. Services are at 9 and 10:30 in the morning, on Sundays, obviously. So going back to the forgiveness thing,
Yeah.
I never realized how important forgiveness was, and I've said the Lord's Prayer 1,000 times.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't until Jesus mugged me that I realized that the biggest challenge God gives us is, if you want to be forgiven, I'll forgive you the way you forgive others.
Mm-hmm.
What happens if someone doesn't forgive? They choose not to forgive. Is there a consequence to that? Does God forgive them differently, like he says in the Lord's Prayer? I'm just curious about that.
Yeah.
As you know, forgiveness is my ministry,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm always learning. You can't give something away if you don't have it. So
Yeah.
I try to have it as much as I can. But if I don't forgive somebody and I tell people I'm not going to forgive them and I continue to speak poorly of them, what are the consequences to that?
Yeah, it's kind of like.
And by the way, I'm not going to test that. But
Yeah. No, it's kind of like going up to a vending machine that's empty. The vending machine can't dispense what it hasn't received. And I think what Jesus is saying there is, if you don't value forgiving others, there's this really good chance you don't value receiving forgiveness from God. And I think the same spirit that allows us to forgive is going to be the same spirit that allows us to receive forgiveness. And I don't see this as, I don't see forgiveness there as conditional. God saying, okay, if you forgive others, I'll forgive you. What I'm hearing Jesus say there is, okay, forgiveness is like this beautiful, crazy, powerful thing. And the more you practice it, the more you're going to receive it. And just even think like in a relationship you might have with somebody, Mac, if you're like fast to forgive, you're willing to embrace somebody else's imperfection, and you don't hold grudges, there's a really good chance then the other person's going to treat you that way. But Paul says love, keeps no record of being wronged. If you're nitpicking, if you're critical, if like you're always keeping score, there's a pretty good chance the other person's going to do that to you. So I think in that case, Jesus is saying like forgiveness is this crazy, beautiful, powerful thing, and the more you're likely to give it, the more you're likely to receive it.
I grew up here in Nebraska, and on Sunday mornings there was a program on with a guy by the name of Mel Maines, and his character that he used as a puppet was Morty the Mouse. And if you joined the Morty the Mouse Club, you would get this little golden ruler, because on it was the golden rule.
Oh yeah, that's cool.
And I messed up for a big part of my life because I thought it meant that the way you treat me is the way I'm going to treat you back.
Yeah.
But that's not the way it works.
Yeah, so no, for sure. So the way that we treat other people is going to have a really high correlation to the way that others treat us. Now, it's not always going to be that way. I mean, you can bestow kindness and grace and joy to someone else, and they may or may not get that. But if you treat someone, poorly, they're probably going to treat you poorly. So there is a huge correlation to the way others treat us, according to how we treat them first. And we can't control part two, but we can control part one.
Yeah, I know, and I'm not questioning that by any means, but if the golden rule, and I actually want to be wrong on this, but if the golden rule says I'm going to treat you the way you treat me, I know that's not what it says, but that's what I hear.
Yeah, so in that case, Jesus says, do to others as you would want them to do to you. So I want you to be graceful to me. I want you to be kind to me. I want you to, listen to me when I need that. And I think Jesus is basically saying, like, here's a good litmus test. Like, I want you to treat other people like you want them to treat you.
Yeah.
And not how they treat you, how you want them to treat you.
All right, here's our last question for the week. And by the way, thanks for coming on the new show.
And my pleasure.
You're welcome anytime. I have a person in my life who says the following. Well, I'm a good person. I know I'm going to heaven. Mm-hmm. There is no faith there. There is no fruit there. What do you say to somebody who says that? Because that's so wrong according to what the Bible teaches us.
It is. And so I've done, so many funerals over the last 25 years. And it's almost like a civil religion when people say that. Well, Grandpa was a great guy. He's with Grandma now. Or, he made such a good impact. And so Christianity is not based upon our works. It's based upon our relationship. And, it's really like a sort of theology, this bad theology. Like it's like this works righteousness. And in that case, like those who are well-resourced can do so much more than the rest of us. So it's any salvation that doesn't start with the word Jesus is bad salvation. It's not because of what we do; it's because of what He's done. And so to answer the question, what would you say? I think it depends on the relationship you have with a person, but I think it's always appropriate to like share. Well, my belief is that we are saved by grace through faith. It's not because of what we've done; it's because of what Jesus has done, and it's His gift to us.
Well, Pastor Craig, I sure appreciate you being here on the new radio program, and thanks for everything you do for your church.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. It's been great.
You bet. And if you want to check out Craig's church, you can go online and listen to some of the sermons. It's at weomaha.com. I want to thank the folks at DivineTruthChristianStore.com. Anything you would ever need for a baptism or a graduation or a wedding, you can get it online through them, and it's the best quality of things that you can get. And thanks to them for sponsoring The View From A Pew.
Christian Store, where you'll find more.